Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. We are beginning week 3 of the long trek to the 2020 NFL season. And it's going to be interesting. My name is Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon right across me. Welcome back, Rick.
What's up?
How we feeling? Better? Not better?
I think better, not because I'm no longer sick, but better because I get to watch Jimmy G and
Super Bowl.
Patrick Mahomes.
No, stop. Get out of here with that. I don't want to hear nothing on the Mahomies.
Patrick Mahomes.
I'm going to have to listen to this for like 2 weeks, and I'm not sure.
Patrick Mahomes is in the Super Bowl.
You know, I usually don't have vendettas against players.
Patrick Mahomes.
But he's one of them for some reason.
Why?
I don't know. Everyone asks that question. I don't know how to answer it. I really don't.
Is it because he's better than your quarterback?
That's neither here nor there. Anyway, we got a lot to get to in this episode. News, quick reactions from this past weekend, AFC NFC Championships. And we will continue our series on consistency, and we're going to discuss running backs for this week. Sound good? Sound interesting?
Yes.
Slightly, maybe not. It took me like 25 minutes after I did our consistency, our RB1s and RB2 percentage for the show. It took me about 20 minutes to figure out that I was in standard.
Oh.
And I had to like figure it all out over again because I'm an idiot. But anyway, before we get into the news, check out our website at thefantasychampions.com. Hopefully we will be posting some more content for you to indulge yourself in later this month. Follow us on Twitter at the FF Champs, on Instagram at the Fantasy Champions. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/the Fantasy Champions. Man, my tongue is tied today. I don't have it. Subscribe wherever you listen. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube. Click the bell on YouTube for notifications. Leave a review and share this podcast with your friends. Let's get to the news.
You try to I think it's because we're trying to do the show in a certain amount of time. So you try to get through that
really fast.
Very fast, and your mouth just can't handle it.
Nope. Let's get into the news. Make this really short. A lot of interesting points to get to.
Let's make this short, as you put 15 things in the news.
I did. No, you have to get to everything, huh?
All
right, so
we'll talk about it. Go ahead.
Art Rooney said the team still doesn't have a concrete timeline for Ben Roethlisberger's rehab, so that is assuming now that Big Ben is going to return next year and play football.
He's made no.
That gives the Steelers maybe a little bit more time to find a better quarterback.
Tom Brady?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say that for every team.
I'm talking about a young quarterback.
I'm just gonna say that though for every team that might need a quarterback.
Yeah, I guess. New Orleans police obtained an arrest warrant accusing Odell Beckham of a simple battery charge in relation to a locker room. He was celebrating with his college football team LSU for their national championship victory.
Got a little lit.
Got a little drunk, lit, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, and he whacked a cop's butt. And you can check out the video by searching it on the internet. Odell Beckham, cop's butt. All you gotta look up, and you'll find everything you need to know.
I feel like most people have already seen the video.
What an idiot!
Yeah, seems like he's really fun at a party though.
He might be.
Would invite.
Did you see him? He was drunk before the first quarter.
He got a little pre-game drinks and mid-game drinks, post-game drinks.
He also, in other Odell Beckham news that's later in this, he underwent successful surgery to repair a core muscle injury. I don't know where this arrest thing went. Really don't.
It got dropped.
Oh, it did? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay. As long as we're all on the same page.
I'm pretty sure it got dropped.
He had successful surgery on his abdomen, I believe. So he should be good to go for, obviously off-season team activities and all the like. So we'll have to see. It's going to be an interesting offseason. There are people who believe he's just going to stay in Cleveland. There are people who believe that he's going to leave.
I think
it's not up to him.
Yeah, I guess we'll see how the offseason plays out. I really would be surprised if he leaves.
Yeah.
Considering he just left New York.
Right.
It would be a pretty bad look for him if he gets traded again the next season.
Right. NBC Denver reports Philip Lindsay underwent a cleanup arthroscopic procedure on his right wrist. 37-year-old Jason Witten remains undecided on his playing future, but also said that he would be willing to go join the new, and we'll say this right now, the new offensive coordinator of the New York Giants, Jason Garrett. He's willing to go join Jason Garrett.
Giants fans have spent years making fun of the Cowboys.
Yeah,
Jason
now they're
Garrett.
just like they got every Cowboy and a Patriot. So Jason Witten might go play for Jason Garrett.
Would he play or help coach?
He would play.
Okay.
That's what he said he would do. So I don't know what's going to go. We'll find out what happens with Jason Witten. I think it was a 1-year contract, so he is a free agent. I'm not sure any team wants to really.
It's so weird that he played for so long, then retired, went into broadcasting, came back, played again, and he might continue playing.
It's weird. Suspended free agent, wide receiver Antonio Callaway, Browns wide receiver. He signed a deal with the Tampa Bay Vipers, and you're like, who's that?
XFL.
XFL team.
Which starts right after the Super Bowl.
So we're 3 weeks away from
Should we
XFL.
play XFL fantasy?
Yes. No. I'm in Dynasty XFL. Let's go.
Oh gosh.
Go deep.
That's a dynasty league that would last 2 years.
Do they have a draft like after the NFL draft? Do they draft?
They had a draft I think in November.
Do they draft crappy players?
I don't know how it works.
The NFL? This is crazy.
I don't know.
Anyway, that I just thought I'd throw that in there for shock factor and find it kind of interesting. According to Jason La Canfora, Tom Brady will take a methodical approach to his upcoming free agency, which means we'll probably won't get a decision.
March 13th. Just means,
also, Tom Brady has been cited saying that he is going to weigh his options, and he will meet with other teams in free agency. This doesn't mean he's leaving New England, but he wants to play free agent right now. He's also getting drunk at UFC fights on Snapchat.
Hey, he's just enjoying his night, man. Can't hate.
Yeah. Ian Rappaport reports that the Titans are hoping to re-sign impending free agent Derrick Henry.
Forgot he's a free agent.
Yeah, I know. I did too. Lots of running back free agents this year. Adam Schefter reports the Bengals have no intention of trading their top pick. They also are re-signing AJ Green a definite priority.
Which makes sense considering they didn't trade him.
Right.
If they wanted to get rid of him, I think they probably should have traded him.
Now, does AJ Green re-sign immediately, or does he go take a couple of visits?
If I was him, I would take a couple of visits at least.
Yeah, he won't.
No, you don't think so?
No.
He probably won't, yeah.
CBS Sports' Jason La Canfora reports that there's a lot of buzz about Tampa Bay being a possible landing spot for Phillip Rivers. This is actually relatively interesting. Why?
That's such...
Why, though?
Tampa's going to go from...
Is Phillip Rivers...
What do they go, 7-9?
Better than Jameis Winston?
I don't think so. And I'm not a big... I don't like James... I'm not a big Jameis Winston guy.
No, I have a question.
Like, football-wise, not fantasy, but like for football-wise, I really don't think Jameis Winston is all that. And I still think he's probably, at this point in his career, better than Phillip Rivers.
So, fantasy-wise, if Phillip Rivers does sign with Tampa, do you like him next year at all?
No.
Okay, all right.
I don't care if he throws the ball 50 times.
Yeah, me neither. Kyle Shanahan said Tevin Coleman suffered a dislocated shoulder in the NFC Championship game. I would assume he's not going to play in the Super Bowl.
He actually did. I saw something today that said he might.
That would be stupid. Just give the ball to Raheem Mostert. Love you, Raheem. Art Roney said the organization will address Juju Smith-Schuster's contract situation when appropriate. I feel like they should take their opportunity to re-sign him now while he had a bad year.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Like,
his value is probably going to be at an all-time low right now.
Yeah. And then in a final piece of news, Julian Edelman underwent shoulder surgery. He is expected to be ready for New England's offseason workouts. So
Antonio Brown is being investigated for possible battery at his home by police right now. And he hasn't been arrested, but there is an active scene.
Breaking news.
Yeah. There you go.
Oh God, I don't even want to talk about Antonio Brown.
I don't either.
I came into this show not wanting to talk about Antonio Brown.
That's all.
Oh,
that's all we'll say.
That guy's a Class A idiot. He's got to get help. I forgot to. I didn't put this in the news because I didn't feel like it was relevant. But his agent dropped him. Is it Drew Rosenhaus?
Really?
Yeah, I can't remember who his agent is.
He's been defending him nonstop for like a year.
Yeah, he dropped him and said, "You need to get help. I want to be your agent, but you need to get help. Figure yourself out, and then I'll be your agent." So
he's not playing in the NFL.
I have this thing in my many years of working and leading things and all such nonsense. I've seen a plethora of individuals. And you can tell the ones who are... I like Antonio Brown, but you can tell which ones are self-destructing. Because they always claim, A, they're not doing anything wrong, and B, everyone else around him's like, you need help, and he doesn't get any help because he doesn't think he needs any.
Yeah.
Like, literally no one's on your side except for your
He's
mom.
not listening to advice.
He's not, and he has to. Like, you want to save your career, you have to listen to advice. Now, he's so talented that a team is willing to take a risk.
I really don't think he's playing in the NFL again.
The second he said, well, this is my secondary point, is the second he says, hey, he does anything stupid, literally anything, they'll cut him.
Yeah.
And then he won't have a job. So it's like, you got to make it through a whole offseason. Like, I think the Saints might take a risk. If Drew Brees comes back, they'll be like, okay, let's put this guy next to Michael Thomas. You know what I mean? They might take that risk. And then when he says stupid stuff about the organization, he'll get his butt cut in 5 seconds. How long does it take? I don't know if he will get to this point, but how long does it take for him to realize he's an idiot?
# no more white women 2019.
So strange. Anyway, so let's move into quick reactions. I just wanted to talk quickly about the Chiefs and Titans game and then the Packers and 49ers game. Just some notes that we had from that, fantasy-related notes. Did you see anything in the Chiefs and Titans game that would give you excitement or pause about certain individuals?
Ryan Tannehill.
Okay.
A little bit. I've kind of been trending down on him. I know you're a big Tannehill guy. And next year we talked about him being an intriguing option on this show for next season, but I don't know. Watching the game against New England and the game against Baltimore, it was all Henry, so there was really no need to use Ryan Tannehill. Yeah.
So you can't really say, okay, those two performances were his fault, but that game against Kansas City,
he really was not that good.
He wasn't that great. So, I mean, obviously this is the best of the best, and he had a very long stretch.
Also, if Mahomes played like this, because it's not only he's passing and doing all that, he's also rushed for like 60 yards in both games.
Yeah.
Imagine what he would be doing fantasy-wise right now.
No, I know. I don't think he's going to do that in the regular season.
He's not, which is a problem, because people are going to see that and be like, oh, Mahomes is going to throw for 50 touchdowns and rush for 10.
Here we go. First round pick again.
Yeah, and then, but in the regular, now that the Chiefs are like, they were good last year as well, but I feel like now that they're like a real powerhouse, he's going to conserve himself, especially running. He's not going to run the ball a lot in the regular season.
No, he's going to try to keep himself healthy, which I think is going to be a detriment to his fantasy game.
It will, yeah.
I was telling you about this earlier today, is that the Chiefs are changing their style. Like, they can drop 30 on you in a quarter or a quarter and a half, and we've seen it. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we know they can score fast, but what makes you a good team is not, like, you have to logically think about how you're scoring, not just scoring. You know what I mean? Like, if you score really fast, it doesn't really help you. Look at Houston. Scored really fast.
I mean, it will help you.
24-0 in the first quarter, divisional round week, and everyone was like, oh, Kansas City blows. They're going home. And then all of a sudden they came back.
Scoring is scoring. The problem is if you score like 20 in a quarter, you usually can't keep that pace up the whole game.
No, right. So I think, and the other part of it too is that you're obviously putting pressure on the other team, but by passing it so much, you're basically forcing it into a situation where you could make a big mistake and change the tide of the game, which is what happened to Houston when they went up 24-0 in the first quarter against Kansas City. Yeah. So I think that Kansas City's slowing their offense down, which is for the better of their team. For fantasy football, it blows. Because he's not going to get... You saw all this season, Mahomes was getting like 200 yards a game and 2 touchdowns, and he was like the QB... What was it? QB 5 on average. So it was like he wasn't that prolific 50-touchdown guy that's going to win you a fantasy season. I still got to work through my thoughts on what I think Mahomes is going to do next year. But I think he's probably going to finish, obviously, in the top 5 again. There's no way he doesn't. Unless he gets hurt, right. But for me, Mahomes is not going to do what he's doing now. Like, right now he's trying to win.
Yeah.
And in the regular season, it's just trying to get enough points to win a game. You know what I mean?
Right.
He's just going to take it
Conserve himself.
So I did notice. Now, this probably shouldn't. We're going to talk about Derrick Henry today, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. But yes, we're going to talk about Derrick Henry. I just needed to confirm that in my mind. But anyway, Derrick Henry had an abysmal game, and we'll talk a little bit later as to why Derrick Henry is not as good as everyone thinks he is. I don't know if you'll agree with the points that I make, but we'll have to see what happens. We'll have a nice, polite discussion about it. Was there anyone else in this game? I know A.J. Brown's a monster. He shows signs of being a very good wide receiver.
The problem is like his ceiling though. I'm
trying all of me not to sell
if it's gonna be like the Corey Davis thing.
Oh God, no!
Like, is he gonna just stay at like 4 catches a game?
Yeah,
for the next 4 years. Because this is what Corey Davis was as a rookie too. Everybody got hyped.
Yep.
And they made the playoffs in Mariota against the Patriots, and he got like a one-handed touchdown against the Pats, and everybody freaked out.
Yeah.
And look at him now.
Let's talk about Packers 49ers. I believe on Thursday's show we talk about this guy, Raheem Mostert. But Tevin Coleman got hurt. He ran 22 times, 200-something yards, 106 yards, and 2 touchdowns in the previous game. And so it looked like they were going to Coleman. And then Mostert comes in.
That's the thing with
4
touchdowns.
He had 4 touchdowns and like 220-plus yards.
Oh, yeah, an insane game. But that offensive line absolutely destroyed Green Bay.
It's so good.
And Green Bay didn't make any adjustments defensively.
No.
They didn't stack the box. They just played their regular defense.
I knew that game was over when San Francisco lined up in the red zone in 3rd and 8 and ran a draw.
And scored a touchdown.
Yeah, I knew that game was over from that moment. I was like, oh, clowns. These guys are just done.
And I was saying it all year that I thought Green Bay was overrated, and I think they showed it.
I think the only fantasy option in this game that kind of got me excited was seeing Raheem Mostert. Unfortunately for the 49ers, they really like to go with multiple backs, but I think they have a gem here. Like I really like
I think
Raheem
he's very
Mostert.
good as well. But
he's fast.
He is. He's wicked fast, but I don't see it changing their approach next year.
No, they're not going to change.
And with Jerick McKinnon, you think they'll give him another chance?
No.
Yeah, you think he's done?
He's probably going to leave and go to another team, to be honest with you.
I think he's still under contract.
Is he
Unless
really?
they cut him, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. If he has another injury setback, he's done.
At least, so even if that is the case, they're still going to, I think, use Tevin Coleman.
I mean, there's going to be a lot of people.
I think there'll be weeks they use Matt Breida as well.
There's going to be a lot of people that get excited about McKinnon next year, like they always do. Just because of how well Raheem Mostert and Tevin Coleman even Matt Breida have ran in this offense. Like, they've been very good running backs.
Yeah.
So having Jerick McKinnon back, if he ends up being the number 1 guy or, the number 2 guy, then he's actually probably going to put up some good fantasy numbers. But I just don't think that that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because of the injuries. But anyway, I don't know if there's anything else you want to talk about in this Packers game. But
I think that's about it. Not too much.
Yeah, Jimmy G will probably never be a good fantasy quarterback.
Don't say that.
So let's move into our main segment, the consistency series, and try to rip through 12 running backs in about 10 minutes. I think we can do it.
Yeah,
maybe not.
That's up to you.
But anyway, yeah, that's up to me. So let me just pull up my charts here to make sure that we're talking about the right people. The order at which the consistency chart, just to let you know, Rick, is incorrect as to what the actual order is.
Okay.
So just follow along as we go. The number 1 running back in fantasy football this year was Christian McCaffrey. Now listen to this. I just want to
Christian. What really?
I just want to give these numbers in half PPR, right? And I don't even want to go to PPR because he might have scored 500. You might have. He might have. Christian McCaffrey had 413 fantasy points, which is a lot. Aaron Jones had 290 at second place, which is almost a good 120 plus. So that's more than. Wow, dude, that's crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah, so let's get into his consistency a little bit. He had 14 RB1 finishes, obviously. He had 1 RB2 finish. So week 2, he kind of let people down a little bit and he finished, I think, as the RB 43 in PPR in week 2 of the NFL season. But outside of that week, he finished as an RB1 or an RB2 in every single game.
Jeez, man.
So he was relatively consistent. That's what you're looking for out of your running back one. There's nothing else I can say about Christian McCaffrey other than the guy's a monster. Now, next season, with the addition of a new coaching staff and some of the stuff that's changed, I do think that Christian McCaffrey's not going to touch the ball.
You said this literally the exact same thing last year.
I just don't like. Who's the head coach now? I forgot. Oh, it's
the guy from.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to remember his name. Duel.
Yeah, whatever.
Cool, whatever your name.
College
is,
coach.
We'll talk about you on the coaches. I want to match.
So he Norv Turner is still there though, right? The offense coordinator.
Yes.
So I think he's the big McCaffrey lover, I think. So
yeah, he had a total of 403 touches.
My gosh.
When you touch the ball 403 times, you're guaranteed to get 400 fantasy points unless you completely are trash. But so McCaffrey, clearly the RB1. He had an 87% RB1 percentage, 6% RB2 percentage in a year where running backs were very, very, very inconsistent. Having a guy like Christian McCaffrey was a mainstay. You knew you were going to get 20-plus points. Like, there was a team in our league who was, I would say, in a completely, trying not to offend, completely unoffensive way, his team was trash. And he had Christian McCaffrey. Made the playoffs. Beat me in the first round. Christian McCaffrey had 30-plus points in the first round. And it single-handedly
McCaffrey and Patriots defense.
Yeah. That's what he had on his team, and it carried him the entire season. So ridiculous. But 87% of the time being an RB1, that's going to win you games.
Yeah, big time.
So Christian McCaffrey, obviously a monster. He had 1.23 fantasy points per touch.
Jeez,
in
really?
half PPR. And that's for full PPR. And half PPR is 102. So that's just Christian McCaffrey for you. I do think, do you really think he's going to get 413 touches next year? I don't think he's going to get 413 touches.
He might get 400.
I don't think so. He might get 350, which would make him like the number 1 running back anyway. Regardless.
I think he'll get
to me, he's consensus number 1.
If he plays every game again,
I don't want to speak for you.
He's going to get to me. Yes, he's number 1. I think he could get close to 400 touches.
He might. See, that's the thing is I always talk about fantasy points per opportunity or touch and 1.2 fantasy points per touch in half PPR. Like, if he touches the ball even 350 times, you want him on your team.
Yeah.
So barring some kind of injury, which I think is also something you have to factor into your decision-making process because he does get the ball so much. If he does touch the ball 400
hasn't been
times
injured yet, though. Which means he's due, but...
Yeah, I know. I feel it. He's due.
At the same time, he's a pretty, durable guy, so...
Yeah, right.
I don't know. It's confusing.
So the next guy on our list coming in at number 2 is Aaron Jones. He had 7 RB1 finishes and 4 RB2 finishes, which means that about 65.
And did he play in 16 games?
I don't believe so. Hold on, let me just check. It's all the way on the other side. He played in all 16, yes.
Oh gosh.
So he had 7 RB1 finishes, 4 RB2 finishes. 43% of the time he was an RB1, 25% of the time he was an RB2. So that basically just means that about 68% of the time he was an RB1 or 2.
Yeah.
So
that's 5 games where he was
very inconsistent.
Absolute trash.
Yeah. It was that game 1 of the season. That was one of them. But if you watched him fluctuate from game to game, I traded him because of this, because I like to have consistent guys like Christian McCaffrey on my team. You didn't have a lot of them this year. But Aaron Jones being the RB2 in fantasy and then not giving you consistency is it's kind of like you need that consistent running back. Now, for me, I had Zeke, so pairing him with Zeke probably wouldn't have been a bad scenario because
you
Zeke might have made up for the lost games. But it was because of, I don't think it was Aaron Jones' fault that he was playing bad. It was just the fact that every other game they decided they wanted to go with Jamal Williams or Aaron Jones. They tried to do both. They tried to do either one.
And I like Aaron Jones, but I don't think he's insanely good. If you play a good defense, I think he's typically...
He has the same fantasy points per touch as...
I know, but watch him play. Like he's not.
No,
he doesn't hit the hole.
He doesn't look scary. But
yeah, he's a good player. But
the difference between him and a lot of other running backs is the fact that I think he scored 19 touchdowns or something like that, or maybe at 20 plus all purpose.
I don't think he's gonna do again next year. But
but they give him the ball in the red zone so much that it's just like there's no way he doesn't score 15 or more next year. Wow.
Ouch.
Yeah. So I don't think he scores 15. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think he's getting.
I see.
He has a chance to be so overrated next year. I'm not an Aaron Jones guy.
To be honest with you, I feel as though he is. I want to see where he gets drafted because there's a lot of fluctuation.
Well, yes, yeah. But like, if he gets drafted in the top 5, top 3,
right.
I don't want to draft him.
We'll talk about it as the offseason goes along, where certain guys get picked up, and like guys like Derrick Henry is the number 3 running back, who we'll talk about in a second. But like, is Derrick Henry and Aaron Jones going to get drafted in the top 5? I don't think so. I think there's some idiots that
Derrick Henry might. I think the way his postseason happened.
Yeah.
And then people are also going to look at where he finished. You add those two things, I think Henry will be a top 5 pick.
Do you know who Aaron Jones reminds me a lot of though?
Who?
Alvin Kamara. Kamara's a better running back.
Yeah, and Kamara's better. That's the thing.
But Kamara has never rushed for 1,000 yards in his career.
Yeah.
And he always gets about 15 to 1,600 yards. And that's kind of, I think Aaron Jones had around 12 to 15. So he didn't do bad in the yards category, but it's just the sheer amount of touchdowns that those guys get, that if you do regress in the touchdown category, it's a massive hit to them. That's why I go after guys like Ezekiel Elliott over, because I was complaining about him only getting 12 touchdowns, but like, you know what I mean? Like, for me, it's like I'd rather have the guy like Leonard Fournette, who's going to get me an absurd amount of yards and consistently get me those yards and score 3 touchdowns, than have, a guy who gets me 21 touchdowns and then the following season when I come back and I try to draft him, he gets like 2.
Yeah.
And then he screws you. So always pay attention to that. I believe on the sheet that we have, I broke it down by what fantasy points they scored for yards and how many fantasy points they scored for touchdowns. For Aaron Jones, he had 96 fantasy points, 114 fantasy points from touchdowns altogether, all purpose. And he had 204 or 180 from half PPR fantasy points, receptions, and yards. So that means that if he scored half of the touchdowns that he scored, he would have been like a mid to high end RB2. I mean, mid to high end RB2, roughly.
Jeez.
So without those touchdowns, man, he was worthless. But let's talk about Derrick Henry. 9 RB1 finishes, which is very good. 1 RB2 finish, and then 6 just completely bust games. Now, this is what I'm going to say on Derrick Henry. You saw the problem with Derrick Henry in every to me, this is why Derrick Henry's not a good fantasy option. Because in games where they win and against trash opponents, they're just going to hand it to Derrick Henry 300 times, and he's going to get a 200-yard game and 2 touchdowns. When they play, not that Baltimore and New England were trash opponents.
But the games they win.
But in games they win, they usually just hand the ball off the whole time. When they are playing from behind, Derrick Henry disappears. Now, he wasn't bad fantasy in the AFC Championship game. I think he had like 70 or 80 yards. But that's what those 6 games where he busted, he was getting 7 or 8 points. His problem is he gets 80 yards a game, which is great when you score a touchdown. And then when he doesn't score a touchdown, he just busts out.
I mean, I like Derrick Henry, but not at the point where he's probably going to go next year. If you had him this year, he
might go, like you said, he might go top 5.
Which I think he will.
Which is hard for me to swallow. I don't like that.
What if he's back into the first round, early second?
If he's the second round, I'll do it.
Okay.
Like if I'm picked 7 and he falls to what's the turn on that? It's
13,
12 team, 13, something like that.
Oh, 12 team? I don't know.
And 10 team, it's 13, I believe. But if he's there at the turn, and I take like a wide receiver first round and then second round Derrick Henry, I'm okay with that. Or I get 2 running backs to start my draft. But I don't want to have to rely on Derrick Henry to be my RB1.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are going to be like, these guys are idiots. Derrick Henry was the RB3. Yeah, but was he though?
I mean, if Barkley plays,
if you take week 17 out, the 40-point week 17, right?
Yeah.
Which, you play weeks 1 through 16. He was the RB like 8.
Yeah.
So, let's relax on Derrick Henry for a second. You know what I mean? He's a good running back, but to me, he's a low-end RB1 with mid to high-end upside, possibly if they win enough games. You know what I mean?
Mm.
If they're playing well against teams, then he'll do that. But
yeah, no, I agree with you for the most part with Derrick Henry.
But his half point per PPR touch per game is 0.89, whereas a lot of guys in the league, the other top 3 guys have a 1 fantasy point per touch. Now 0.89 is not bad, but it's surprising that he has that high of in a half PPR setting. You know what I mean? When he doesn't catch balls, so his upside is just extremely capped. So don't scout Derrick Henry. Don't actually be like, oh, you know what? I'm just gonna draft him because he was really good.
Man, he was great against the Ravens. I'm taking him first overall.
Let's talk about Zeke a little bit. He had 9 RB1 finishes, 6 RB2 finishes, which means he almost finished with the same amount of RB1 and RB2 finishes as what's his name? He did finish with the same amount of RB1 and RB2 finishes as McCaffrey.
Difference was McCaffrey.
Now, obviously, this is the way I'm going to do it. My early top 3 next year is probably going to be McCaffrey, Barkley, and then Zeke.
Okay.
It kind of hurts me a little bit because Zeke drives me crazy as a running back in general.
I don't disagree. Who would you have 4?
Don't know.
Dalvin Cook for me.
Is it Dalvin Cook? See, that would be the argument. See, I don't even know. Dalvin Cook finished
because he got
very
hurt
badly.
He did have a bad last week, but he also was injured.
Yeah.
He played 14 games and still was the RB4 or 5.
Right.
So,
but anyway, so 56% of the time he was an RB1. His problem was every time he was an RB1, it was a low-end RB1, generally speaking.
Yeah.
But he did it so much that he ended up being a high-end RB1. You know what I mean? You do it consistently, you get in the top. So what I'm hoping is that after 2 years of Ezekiel Elliott, you have guys that are at the top of the league, like Christian McCaffrey, Aaron Jones is high up there, Derrick Henry is high up there. Why are those guys that high? Touchdowns. Yes. Christian McCaffrey's because he catches the ball a lot, obviously, but he scored a lot of touchdowns as well.
Yeah, Aaron Jones scores.
The reason why Zeke hasn't finished in the top 3 the last 2 years is because he's only gotten 10 to 12 touchdowns. So for me, I think he needs to. I'm hoping that there's a positive regression so that he can just.
10 to 12 is not. It's not that's awful.
I guess not. But anyway, is there anything else you want to say about Zeke?
No, he's your guy.
I love you, Zeke. Let's talk about Dalvin Cook. 7 RB1 finishes, 6 RB2 finishes. He was about 50-50. 50 RB1, 42.86 RB2. So he got you what you needed. He did taper off at the end of the season and had a little bit of difficulty. I would say you look at the RB1 percentage. For a guy that finished a majority of the season in the top 3 and what people thought was the number 2 running back in fantasy this year, to only finish as a RB1 50% of the time is a little bit shocking.
Yeah, but I believe he only played in 14 games. So
no, I know, but that's accounting for the 14.
Right. But So the reason why is because at 13 of the 14 weeks, like Zeke and McCaffrey, he was at least a
RB1 or better.
Yeah, or RB2 or better.
Yeah.
So he finished in the top 20 or whatever it is. So he every single week was getting 10 points at least.
Right.
His poor weeks were 10 points. So I do think he when he was out there was in the same class as those guys consistency wise.
Right.
The only difference again, just like Zeke, he just couldn't have as many RB1 finishes as McCaffrey did.
I'm not super excited about Dalvin Cook next year. I might rank him 4 or 5 similar to you, but I'll have to see. He kind of scares me just a little bit.
The only thing that scares me about Cook is injuries. Every single year of his career, he has been injured. This was his healthiest season.
Yeah, and
still got injured. We saw what he can do. Still got injured at the end.
Yeah. I think that is something that should keep him. It kind of reminds me almost of a Melvin Gordon situation where Melvin Gordon always averaged these really, really good games. And he had last year, I think he had about the same in half PPR and fantasy points per game as Dalvin Cook did this year. But the reason why he didn't finish in the top 3 or 4 is because he was hurt 3-4 games, and so it's like it's the same thing with Dalvin Cook, is that he just didn't finish with that, you know what I mean, full 16 games like an Aaron Jones or a Derrick Henry did. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that does scare me. Injuries are obviously a concern, which is why I don't think you can rank him in the top 3 or 4, maybe. I'm going to have to see. I feel like Dalvin Cook may be, and I like him a lot, but he may come out next year as it depends if how much of an effect did Kevin Stefanski have on Dalvin Cook.
Yeah, that is a factor that I did not take into account.
Yeah. Which helps our next guy, but we'll talk about him in a second. But anyway, I think he's obviously a very good running back, but I feel like he's a guy that could just completely burn you if you draft him in the first round.
Just because of it. I think when he's out there, he's fantastic, though.
Right. It could remind me of James Conner didn't end up getting drafted really high, but he was like top 6 for a while.
Unfortunately, I drafted him number 10.
But Conner was like a top 6 guy for quite some time.
Yeah, and he missed like half the season.
So I just hope that the Dalvin Cook scenario, he's explosive, very good running back, and gets a lot of opportunity. And I don't think like their head coach and their assistant head coach are the reason why Dalvin Cook was so successful this year. So I don't think Stefanski's going to have a massive effect on it, but we'll see what happens. Nick Chubb had 6 RB1 finishes, 3 RB2 finishes. It was a little disappointing seeing that he had 6 RB1 finishes. 37.5% of the time he finished as an RB1. And then 18% of the time, but barely 50% of the time he finished as an RB1 or an RB2, which means that outside of that, he had RB3 performances.
I'm pretty sure he was... How many games did Nick Chubb play?
He played about... I think he played all 16.
Did he really?
He did.
So that is actually interesting. I thought he was better than that.
Yeah, these numbers always scare you a little bit.
Yeah, that does. But
now,
to counter that,
this is where it gets interesting because Stefanski, who was the offensive coordinator for Minnesota under Dalvin Cook, or with Dalvin Cook,
and loved to give him the ball. So does this mean that Nick Chubb is now going to experience the Dalvin Cook effect, where they start force feeding it to Nick Chubb, and he ends up being maybe a breakout RB1 I think the plan
year?
for Cleveland next year is going to be kind of how the 49ers approached it this season. And it's partly because Baker had such a bad year and they kind of want to ease him back into it and everything. And they have Nick Chubb. Right. It's going to be running the ball and trying to play good defense. So, yes, I think Nick Chubb.
I think his other problem was how often they got into the red zone and how much they were able to succeed offensively. And I think that's why he ended up, I skipped a guy, Austin Eckler, but he ended up number 7 with 237 fantasy points. And so that's very disappointing, to be honest with you.
Who, Chubb?
Yeah.
I mean, it is a little bit, but considering he was a 2nd-round pick, right? So it wasn't like he was supposed to be like he finished actually higher.
He still finished good.
He finished higher than some people thought.
Thought he was going to be.
Yeah. Or about it, about where.
Right.
Like he in that range. So.
Let's talk about Austin Eckler. 7 RB1, 7 RB2, about 87% of the time he was an RB1.
Beast.
RB2 and RB1.
Especially in PPR and half PPR. In standard leagues, he was less good, but if you he catches, he was their number 1 receiver. Now, does that change with Phillip Rivers if he leaves, which he looks like he's gonna?
Yes, a little bit. It depends on if they draft.
Because Phillip Rivers' whole thing is checkdowns. Like if you watch Phillip Rivers play at this point in his career, he can't do anything else.
Rookies like to check it down too, though.
Yeah. Are they going to get a rookie? Are they going to go?
There's a lot of questions for Los Angeles because Eckler is both the only offensive piece under contract.
Is he under contract?
Yes, he's under contract. Gordon's not under contract.
Yep. Hunter Henry.
Hunter Henry's not under contract. Phillip Rivers might be out. So there's a lot of changes that could happen to the Los Angeles offense. I actually think, so for Austin Eckler, if he's the main guy there and Melvin Gordon goes and plays for another team and they don't re-sign him, I actually like Eckler next year, but I don't want to reach on him. You know what I mean? Yeah. I feel like some people are going to see, oh my God, Eckler was so good when Melvin Gordon was not in, and now I'm going to spend a 2nd-round pick on him, and I'm going to be like, whoa.
1st-round pick probably if that's
oh my gosh, dude! I just don't want anything to do with that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I just can't, because they're gonna like, he could.
I would like him in the third if he was by himself.
Yeah, third or fourth if he was by himself. It depends on how good the offense is too.
Yeah.
Like, what do they retain Phillip Rivers? Do they?
I think that is going to be
Henry?
important. Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of question marks surrounding the Los Angeles Chargers that we have to watch during the offseason. But when he was there, he was good. I mean, that offense wasn't bad last year. It was just
it was kind of.
They were. See, everyone says that, but they were always in a position to win the game. They just choked in the end.
Yeah. But I mean, like, they
choking,
put up a lot of yards.
There's no negative fantasy points for choking.
They put up a lot of yards, but it was a lot of like trash.
I don't care if the Los Angeles
choking.
Chargers win or not. I just care if my fantasy team wins and if they're giving me fantasy
so I guess
points,
fantasy-wise it was, but their offense really was not like that.
But anyway, I do like Eckler. He had 1.17 fantasy points per opportunity or touch, and that's up there with some of the highest. I think that was the highest fantasy point per touch among guys that started in 8 or more games. So. That's crazy for Austin Eckler, finishing number 6 in fantasy. He was in the top 3 for quite a while there.
Yeah,
because of the first couple games. Let's talk about Mark Ingram at number 8, 229 fantasy points. Ingram had the same problem as Derrick Henry, except he didn't score as many touchdowns as Derrick Henry, so he literally is what I think Derrick Henry really is, which is a low-end RB1. He had 5 RB1 finishes, 5 RB2 finishes, and then 6 complete bust games.
Yeah.
A lot of the time he would get 50 to 80 yards rushing, and then his entire game, all of his games really like depended on how many touchdowns he scored. Scored 0 touchdowns, you were getting a bad week. Scored 2 touchdowns, you were getting a great week. It just depended. I started off the season with him, and he wasn't bad for 3 weeks, and I was like, I got to trade him. I got to get rid of this guy before people realize that he's just a yard. He's a touchdown guy. Like, he's touchdown dependent.
I liked him before the draft. I liked him during the season, and I liked him all year as a flex. As an RB1, obviously, I don't think he was that good. Obviously, you can see that by consistency-wise.
Right.
But if he was your flex, which he was for a lot of teams,
right,
or even RB2 for some, but most teams he was a flex. He was a great flex all season. Now, where he's going to get drafted is
another question.
Yeah, because if he's like a third-round pick, do you want
no?
I don't either.
No, not at all. A guy that only gets you RB1 performance 33% of the time is not really a guy I'm super looking after. But he's not a bad guy. Like I said, he should go in the same. Fine. He should go in the same round this year.
He did bet if you drafted him in like the 5th round, he was good, very solid production.
Now, this is a guy that I really, 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 really like going into next year. I liked him coming into this year, and he did really well. But he did just good enough to be like, all right, I like it, and just bad enough to be like, okay, he's not going to get drafted in the top 7 of running backs. So it's Leonard Fournette who comes in at number 9. He had 7 RB1 finishes, 4 RB2 finishes. He finished as an RB1 or RB2 about 60-something% of the time. So he was very, very good this year. His one problem, I mentioned it earlier, was that he scored 3 touchdowns on the whole season.
Guys, or is it just
I told you it's out of order.
Okay.
But anyway, Fournette scored 3 touchdowns on the entire season.
Yikes!
I want to give you this metric. I believe when I did the numbers out, the number 2 running back in all of half PPR, just on yards, receptions. Yeah, just on yards and receptions, was Leonard Fournette. Which means that if he scored 10 touchdowns, if he scored 7 more touchdowns, he would have been in the top 3.
Is the elite Jacksonville offense?
I don't know.
I
don't know.
I don't think it's.
We'll
see how the offseason
they are so mediocre that he could actually score more touchdowns. I just don't.
He'll get more than 3, I think.
The problem,
but his yards might also go down.
Like too. I think Leonard Fournette is going to have a positive regression in the touchdown category, and it's going to benefit him. Even if he, like I said, if he does the same basic thing yards wise, and then he scores like 5 more touchdowns, just 5, get him to 8, right? He all of a sudden comes away with around 260, 270 fantasy points, which gets him in the top 3.
Yeah.
It's very surprising.
I think he will get like 8 to 10 touchdowns. I don't know if he'll get the same yards and receptions, but if he does do that, then
Doug Marrone,
yeah, he's
going to use. Nothing's changing.
Well, if that's the case, then he might not get 8 to 10 touchdowns.
I kept on calling him Christian McCaffrey or Dalvin Cook light this year, because he really was. He was just those guys without the touchdowns. So,
which is important.
But he was just, like I said, he was just bad enough that he could actually maybe fall the third round again.
He might.
And possibly give you the opportunity of drafting.
Yeah, he might go third round. He'll probably go early third round.
I can't wait till February when people start mock drafting. We could probably see it right now on Fantasy Football Calculator, but that's far too early.
Yeah.
But anyway, it should be interesting to see where Leonard Fournette ends up around July and August. Where he's going to be drafted. But
how the offseason develop? Because if the Jaguars do the exact, like, they don't change anything. I don't know.
They didn't fire Doug Marrone. Do you think they're going to change anything?
Well, or at least add pieces.
Yeah. The next guy is our boy Saquon Barkley, who played in a total of. He had a quad injury. He played in a total of 13 games this year,
and one of them doesn't really even count because he
got hurt in it.
Yeah.
So he had about 6 RB1 finishes, 3 RB2 finishes, 46% of the time as an RB1, 23% of the time as an RB2. This is going to be one of the guys that people might fade on a little bit. Mm-hmm. You're going to get the teams that drafted him and were burned, and they're going to be like, I don't want to draft him. He sucks. And then you're going to get the teams that are going to be like spicy hot, and they're going to be like, oh, my God, I can get Saquon Barkley in that pick. So I think fantasy analysts like us are going to push a guy like Saquon Barkley up very high.
Yeah.
He'll end up being a top 4 pick again. He was very good in the time that he had. The injury, they rushed him back. They didn't have to, and it affected his play.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously he's going to heal during the offseason. He'll be fine. The quad injury affects you in the short term, not the long term necessarily. If he re-injures it next year, then you're talking about a long-term problem.
That's different, but
I like Barkley next year. I love Barkley next year.
Like, I mean, you know my opinion on Barkley, so
he's arguably the most talented running back in the NFL, and he's on a trash team.
Yes,
so bad.
But they have the second. No. Sorry, they have a top 5 pick though.
Yeah.
Are they going to draft an offensive lineman? Because there's right now the NFL.com released their first mock draft, and it has them taking an offensive lineman 5th overall.
They should. I would.
So we'll see how the offseason plays out. Because if they add an offensive lineman or two, I mean that's going to be big for
Rick. They got pieces at every position.
They do. I know.
Except for offensive line.
Yeah, offensive line.
So I like Barkley next year. The fact that 50% of his games, and you can even take one out, it probably upwards of 50 to 60% of the time he finished as an RB1, which is up there among the best in the league. Yeah. So he's still that guy. He's still the guy that you expect to be. No one's going to reach 87% RB1 percentage. Just no one's going to do it. So what I'm looking for is what was good this year and what was good last year is about 65 to 70. And I think that he could totally be there next year. So I like him. He was a little bit inconsistent this year, but I think that was more due to the injuries than anything else. The next guy on our list is Chris Carson. This guy, man, I was very disappointed to find out that he only had 6 RB1 finishes. He did have 6 RB2 finishes, which means that 80% of the time, which is a high rate, he was an RB1 or 2. I like that.
Yes.
I was disappointed that he only had 6 RB1
I think
finishes.
he was the perfect RB2 for your team this year.
Yeah, high-end RB2, low-end RB1.
Yeah.
Which is where he ranked every week.
And he's probably going to be that again.
Next year.
Now, if Rashard Penny leaves, though, they trade him. Because you don't think so? No. I'm not sure they go into next year with both Penny and Chris Carson.
He loves it.
Yeah, he does. I know.
He loves it. Yeah, I mean, regardless of whether Penny stays or go, obviously if Penny goes, Chris Carson, I'll get sweaty. But I think he's the perfect, he should be drafted 9, 10, or 11 in terms of the 9th, 10th, or 11th running back off the board next year. He should be. I do feel like because of his injuries in the second half of the season, he will probably fall a little bit in drafts, maybe past that 10 or 11 mark, which might push him further back enough to be able to draft him in the 3rd round. I don't think that'll happen because there are stupid people out there, but I think that there's a possibility.
I think he'll probably be a 3rd round pick, to be honest with you.
Because I would love that. I would take that all day.
Yeah.
It looks like the 3rd round of running backs is shaping up pretty good in my mind. Whether that happens, whether people actually do what I think is the actual.
And it's also way too early.
Yeah. So we're going to have to see. But there's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of guys that were hyper inconsistent this year, and a lot of guys that were just not.
Yeah.
They weren't up to like seasons before, and maybe it's because they're shifting to the 2 running back sets. Anyway. And the 12th guy in half PPR, the final guy we'll talk about on this episode, is Alvin Kamara. He had 7 RB1 finishes, 4 RB2 finishes.
Now this is a bust.
He busted. Yeah, he got hurt, and he busted pretty hard. He had a massive 2 games to end the season.
Yeah.
So that gives you hope. Hopefully the regression goes in the opposite direction than it did this year, and he starts scoring touchdowns again. But another team with a lot of question marks. Does Drew Brees return, right? Is Teddy Bridgewater actually a great quarterback that can get Alvin Kamara involved enough to be a good running back? You know what I mean? Because the Drew Brees effect has a massive...
Yeah, no, I think if Bridgewater is there, I actually do really like Kamara next year, depending on where he goes.
Yeah.
Because he had such a poor season, I do think he's going to drop.
Right.
Like, imagine Kamara's top of the second round.
Yeah.
Like, to me, it's
good.
That's really good.
I mean, he could also be... What did he hurt this year? I don't remember.
His injury? I don't remember either.
Yeah. It
wasn't anything major, though. I think it was like an ankle.
Yeah. If it's
could be
anything
wrong,
major, that's very concerning. But anyway, I think he's not the same player, obviously, that he was last year. It was concerning. He only had 36 fantasy points from touchdowns this year, which means he only scored 6 touchdowns, I believe. So that's not what Kamara usually does.
That's what excites me, though. Because if he plays next year and a full season and doesn't get hurt, obviously, he's not going to get 20.
Right, but if he hits like 12,
I think he'll get like around 12 to 14.
Jumps him into the top 10, into the top 10 again.
Probably top 5. Low fit, like 5th, but still, yeah.
But like he scores a lot of touchdowns. So if he gets back to what he normally does, obviously that's a good thing. But 78% of the time he was an RB1 or an RB2. So that obviously is super helpful for your team. You look at some of these guys that people are going to take ahead of him. Like, people might take Leonard Fournette ahead of Alvin Kamara. It would be to me. It would be dumb, but that might happen.
Fournette. I'd like both those guys. So I don't know if
Fournette, Carson, Mark Ingram, Austin Eckler, right?
Way.
Those guys. Do you think any of those guys go ahead of Alvin Kamara?
I don't think any one of those guys do. No.
Okay, all right. I'm just saying, like, there are going to be people.
Well, Eckler might if
he's alone.
If he's alone, yeah.
But like, I look at that and I say Chris Carson, Leonard Fournette, some of those guys might actually. I don't think Mark Ingram will, and I don't think Eckler will, but those 2 guys might jump Kamara. And if that's the case, he falls into the mid-second round.
If that happens, that's.
Yeah. But anyway,
holy cow.
But you look at these numbers, you see 78% of the time he's an RB1 or an RB2. You obviously want that on your team. The only other running backs that were doing 78% of the time being in that position were at the top. The number 2 running back in fantasy football, or the number 3 running back in fantasy football, Derrick Henry, finishes an RB1 or RB2 66% of the time. So obviously you have a better situation with Kamara getting fantasy points. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But Derrick Henry is going to go ahead of Alvin Kamara.
Yeah.
So
he will probably, yeah.
That's all the running backs that we have for this episode. Do you have anything to close out the show, buddy? Any closing thoughts?
I think Derrick Henry's going to go number 1.
We're not going to give Super Bowl predictions until next week, so don't be holding your breath, waiting for them.
Jimmy G's going to rip his pants off midfield.
I will rip my pants off midfield if Jimmy G has a good Super Bowl. Don't forget to check out our website, thefantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and talk to you on Thursday, Fantasy Champs.
Peace out.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube, and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.